All right, well, welcome back, Arlo folk, to our continuing series in our webinar installations. Today, we've heard your calls. We're taking a deep dive into blended learning. We've got a couple of fantastic guests to help kind of guide us through their own insights and experience. So welcome back. We appreciate you all taking the time out of your day and attending our webinar session. So for those of you who don't know, my name is Ben Holliday, the Customer Success Manager here at Arlo, responsible for the larger APAC region. And as I mentioned, we've got a couple of guests. Some might look familiar, some might not. John Mitchell, he's our local CEO here at Arlo, got a ton of experience in the training industry and has really worked hard to put together a solid product. So we're going to have some fantastic insight delivered from him. And we've got Liam Liddicoat coming to from Learnbook and based in Australia. He's the commercial services manager, has worked with a ton of clients over the years and brings some tremendous insight as well. So let's talk shop here. Our agenda for today, we're going to provide a little bit of a blended learning overview. What are those key components? What are the business and learner benefits of shifting and offering this blended learning platform? We're going to run through a couple of case studies. We've got 3 fantastic case studies to take a bit of a deeper dive into. What is the problem that they identified? What is that identified solution that's provided to solve the said problem? And what's that ultimate outcome look like? We're also going to take a quick look at the video of their course content, have a pretty good idea of what that user experience is for prospective learners on the blended learning platform. And then we'll dive into a Q&A. We've got a bunch of great questions that have come in over the last couple of weeks from our various webinar attendees, and some hot questions to get answered from these industry leaders. And then of course we'll cover the software that's required to get everything up and running for you and your business. So I'm going to hand it over to John and Liam to kind of take us through the blended learning overview.
Yeah, good stuff. Thanks, Ben. So let's get straight into it. I guess, what is blended learning? Hopefully you've already got a bit of a background on what it is, but in a summary, it's a course that's made up of multiple activities. It's a learning journey as opposed to a single one-off session, workshop session. So when we talk about learning journeys and elements of a blended course, what we're talking about there is different types of activities. So the 3 main activities are face-to-face, obviously a classroom session. So blended obviously always has a classroom or live online interactive component blended around e-learning. So the first one there, face-to-face classroom activity, a live online activity. And I guess the big difference here when we talk about webinars, it's not that traditional one-to-many, it's very much interactive. So it's a group of 15, 20 people interacting like they would do in a classroom environment where there's a lot of conversations going on. It's really just simulation of that classroom experience. In fact, you can even do breakout groups within webinars now. So it's certainly much different than that traditional one-to-many webinar that you probably have heard of or been part of in the past. And then the third one is e-learning. So self-paced modules, work that can be done individually online at any time, where you can start the piece of learning, you can re-engage later times. There's no time-bound activity requirements there. Now, when we look at e-learning, you've got lots of different activity types that make up a e-learning module. So first of all, you can just have text and images, obviously just content that you're reading or visuals. You can have embedded videos into an e-learning activity or module. You can have podcasts, so recordings that then can be played or part of that e-learning module as an activity. You can incorporate things like quizzes. So quizzes are really just multi-choice questions where the system actually marks you as you go. So it's really testing what you've learned. So you might watch a video and then you might have a quiz after that video, and just to make sure the person's read or listened to the content and picked up on it. So there are a few little quizzes, they can see if they've got it right while they're actually doing that activity. And then surveys, these are really designed to capture information that can then be passed to the trainer or other admin staff. So a survey, we'll talk about that later actually in some of our examples. Now SCORM, this is a bit more complicated. It's something you definitely need to know about. So SCORM is actually an industry standard for saving e-learning content. So you have authoring tools. You might have heard of Articulate Storyline. Again, that's going to come up today. Adobe Captivate, another one. So these are tools that allow you to create e-learning content. And then when you create that content, you save it in a format called SCORM. So format is the common format that then other systems can actually save and then run. So Moodle can host a SCORM object, and then that can be played within a e-learning module. So SCORM, really important one for you to pick up on if you haven't already. Of course, other activity types, chat, so you might have a live interactive chat. Forums, this is a big one actually. It's really exciting to see forums come to life. We'll talk about that later. That's where you can post a question to a group of people, and then you can get a discussion going from the various people who are involved in the course during the course or even beyond. Okay, last one there that we're talking about is assignments. So being able to submit an assignment, and then for a trainer to be able to mark it and provide those roles. There's lots more activity types. So we're just touching the service. If you're really interested, H5P is a whole library of different types of activities where you can have really interactive images, interactive videos, some exciting stuff there, but let's keep it simple for now. Okay, so why are we doing blended learning? That's a real key question. And the direct answer to that is it's about increasing profit. So you don't do this just out of the learning outcomes, so improving learning outcomes. It's really mostly about delivering profits to you as a training business. Of course, we are going to look at those improved learning outcomes. There are some really good ones there, but the main one there is about increasing profit, followed by improving learning outcomes. So let's take I guess a traditional 2-day workshop and then move it into a blended and see what happens as we do. So you might have a 2-day workshop. Okay, you're probably charging maybe $1,000 or thereabouts for each attendee. You've got some primary costs, which is say the facilitator, their travel and expenses, and of course paying for their services as well. And you've got the 2-day workshop. With blended, what we're going to do is we're going to chuck in another module. So some interactive online resource after the face-to-face workshop. Now, what's really cool out there is some really good tools. So Rise 360 that allows you to take your existing material, so your existing, say, presentation slides that you're using during a course, or maybe printed material, and repurpose that into a really interactive and exciting piece of material that can be consumed on any device. So essentially, you're taking that material, you're using these really clever tools that allows you just to make it more exciting and interactive. It's the same core information that sits behind that material, the PowerPoints, the printed material, but it just creates a more dynamic and an exciting environment for people to be able to consume. And then you can actually add in things like quizzes, like we talked about before, just to test whether people are picking up on that material. So, okay, so like I said, adding an interactive online resource to the course. The next thing we can do with your workshop is add something prior to the course, so some pre-work, so an e-learning activity that people do before that workshop. Now, again, it's much like the online resource. In fact, the same sort of tools can be used, where you might take your existing material, say videos or articles, again, put a quiz together, but essentially you're creating a piece of work that someone can do at any time, and they can become well informed when it comes to the face-to-face workshop. So they can become prepared in a much better headspace, I guess, in an educational perspective than they would if they just tuned up to that face-to-face session without any pre-work. Next thing we can do with our 2-day workshop is add some pre-course surveys. So those surveys are sent to the learners prior to the course, and they ask things like, what's your background? Why are you doing this course? What are your learning outcomes? What are you trying to get out of this course? And that information then gets fed into the presenters and the facilitators so that they can adapt that material, and specifically that workshop, that interaction, to really focus on what the learners are trying to get out of the course. So they come well prepared. In fact, it's almost to the point that they're coming with some rapport already established. They know something about those learners before they start that interaction. So it's about that rapport, but also about that information that they're capturing to really adapt and evolve that content to be better purposed, a better fit to the learners that are attending. Next thing we can do is at the end of it, so once the course is completely finished and everyone's wrapped up, we can add a forum, and that forum allows you to post questions that then can be answered by, say, the facilitator, the trainer, or other people. Now, historically, we can talk about forums, and they've been going for a while, and they really have limited use when it comes to education. What we've seen, and I've had first-hand experience with this, is now's the time. You know, COVID's really pushing us to be more, I guess, collaborative and interactive online. And so the concept of asking questions and collaborating online is really becoming more relevant than it ever has done, and it ever has been in the past. So an example was our sales manager here at Arlo attended a SaaS workshop for sales managers. At the end of that workshop, they were put into a forum, and they were able to ask questions for all the people who have previously done that course. And that's been invaluable. Jason, who's our sales manager here, has been able to ask all sorts of questions. In fact, one recent question that he asked was, you know, we're looking for a salesperson in Canada. And he asked that group, how do we go about finding a salesperson in Canada? And of course, they were able to get really good responses from people all over the world who have done this course. So it was a really good example just how that learning continues well beyond the course. And those relationships that you build within the course can continue well beyond the course as well. So what does this mean from a financial perspective? Well, what it means is you're delivering more value, therefore you can charge more for the course. So I mean, these are just obviously numbers that were created here, but the essence is that you're delivering a really good package of learning. So you can take your price that you were previously for one, you know, single-day workshop or two-day workshop and increase the price. So the example here is go from $995, $1,000 to $1,600. And I guess the key thing here to also look at is that we haven't introduced any additional costs to the delivery of this course, other than preparing the initial material at the start. In terms of the ongoing cost to run the course, it's actually exactly the same as running that single workshop, the two-day workshop. And that's because you're using software like Arlo and Learnbook to be able to create that automation and to be able to deliver this material, whether it's pre-course surveys, it's activities, e-learning activities. That's all delivered automatically. So the net result is increase your price without increasing the cost to deliver the service. Now, like I said, it's not just about profits, but there's a real improvement in terms of learning outcomes. So we like to talk about splitting the theory and the practice. So what we can do is we can educate people on the theory before the course so that they can focus and the learning can focus on the practical in that workshop, where the classroom sessions are focused on learners and learning from each other and through the engagement interaction of their facilitator themselves. So that sort of learning that you can't teach, I guess, in theory, you can't do by yourself. I mean, a really good example is, say, first aid course where you've got a lot of theory around the first aid, but of course you can't practice, say, resuscitation easily on your screen. You've got to have something physical there. But the beauty there, if you're doing a first aid course, is you can get them to read all the theory and even ask them questions and get them really well clued up and ready for the practical. And on that day, instead of having to go through the theory of that first aid course, it can be focused on the actual practice, the work on the mannequins, as it were, the actual practical application of what they've learned. The other thing there is talking about the fact that the course is tailored, so that because we know the learner and we know where they're coming from, we know what they're wanting to achieve, we can tailor the material to meet their needs. So the courses become more tailored to the actual audience. And then finally, like I talked about that example there with the forum, the learning just doesn't stop at that course when it's finished, it continues. You've got these relationships that you've built that you can then leverage when you've got other problems that come up, questions that come up. So that really building of a network of people behind the course and beyond the course delivery. So COVID's obviously had a major impact on training. There's no doubt about it. There was a time there, it's great to see we're recovering, but there was a time there that clearly no one could do face-to-face training. Indeed, in a lot of places, we still can't do face-to-face training. So there was a push, a direct push to transfer your face-to-face to live online delivery. Now, when it comes to this blended course, it's actually relatively straightforward. In fact, the examples that we're going to go through are going to talk about businesses that were already well set up. They already had their blended courses set up, and they're able to easily swap out that face-to-face session with a live online interactive online session. Yeah, so in our example there, you can see on the screen, You've got all the pre-course surveys, the learning activities, but you've swapped out that 1 2-day workshop with a couple of individual live online sessions. Yes, the key result of this from a cost perspective is that you've no longer got the cost of travel for the facilitator, the trainer, and all the expenses. And that trainer, of course, doesn't need to spend all the time traveling to get to the location, and of course their expenses around that is, like I said, are completely cut back or significantly reduced. So this cost efficiency allows you to then look at your pricing and adjust your pricing accordingly. Again, some examples later on where if you've got a workshop that's face-to-face and all those costs, and if you change them and you reduce your costs so that you're only doing live online, you're able to reduce the price of the course. And then by reducing the price of the course, you're able to make it more accessible and attractive to a wider audience, so increase the uptake. Scalable, clearly when you're doing live online, you're no longer bound by geographic restrictions. You're really only bound by time zone restrictions. So you've opened up a much, much bigger global audience, and it's much more scalable as well. You know, your trainer can jump into a session very quickly, deliver that session, and then jump out of that session and potentially deliver a completely different course, you know, in a matter of hours, where you've got a face-to-face session, they've got all the travel, preparation, delivery, and then, you know, you've got a day in between potentially. So with live online blended courses, you can run essentially a lot more courses per week, utilizing the same resource. So some real key benefits there when it comes to blended and switching out the face-to-face to live online. So now we jump in and we look at some real case studies, and hopefully you're able to join us on our webinar that we ran just last week with Parallel Project Training. Paul, he was fantastic. He got good insight into that, and it was really good to see, I guess, some practical application of blended learning. If you didn't already see that, Paul runs a UK training provider business that delivers project management courses. So let's just look closely in terms of what they were trying to achieve, what their solution was to the problem that they had encountered. So first of all, why did they move to blended learning? What was the real driver? Well, they needed and recognized a need for a cost-effective and flexible model for delivering training, delivering their project management courses. In fact, they were actually well ahead of the game. They had already built their blended courses back in 2009. What their solution was, an entirely online course with a significant reduction in the price, because they took their face-to-face and they did them live online. They converted them to live online. And they actually had those running. So they developed these courses, these blended courses, back in 2009. And at the time, they actually developed 2 types of courses. So they had the face-to-face ones wrapped around with the blended, and they also had their live online wrapped around with the blended. And so when COVID hit, they already had a perfect solution. They essentially just stopped their classroom-based blended courses and rolled through with their live online. And they were really able to pivot. And with their live online courses, what they've been able to do there is like I mentioned earlier, their costs have gone down. They've been able to drop their price for those courses. And in fact, they've dropped it below a magic number, as they talk about, is that £1,000 actually price point, where they dropped it below that, and all of a sudden saw a real increased uptake. And that was actually because in a lot of cases, companies don't need a specific sign-off when it's below a certain budget. So that £1,000 budget seemed to be the real key point where a person could attend a course without getting a business case or extra management approval to do so. So yeah, like I said, they were well prepared. They already had their solution set up, and in fact were able to just really execute well when COVID hit. So the results, simple logistics, cost effective, like I said, for their business. And in fact, they were able to reduce their annual administration costs when they went to blended by about £50,000. So a significant reduction. So by moving all their courses to blended and automating all that activities and all the interactions, they were able to reduce their administration costs of running that program by 50,000. And like I said, their success in COVID, they've actually been able to increase their registrations by 9% with the introduction of the blended solution. So the software they're using is Moodle. They're doing podcasts and on-demand videos. Let's jump into that now. Probably just a point to pick up, which is the content. They've developed the content themselves. They've repurposed their own material into the e-learning content that you see within the blended course. So let's look at one of their courses and what it's made up of in terms of the modules. So first of all, they start their courses. So just a reminder, they're doing project management courses. So they start their course with a pre-course survey, and they actually use Moodle. So they create the survey in Moodle, and those survey responses are then sent to the trainer. They have 8 podcasts or on-demand videos that people must watch prior to the course. And like I said before, they've got little quizzes that they've put after those videos. And that's really to make sure that the people who are watching the videos are actually attentive and picking up the lessons and the learnings within those videos. So they've got those quizzes. Again, they're using Moodle to host those quizzes as well as the videos. And so those must be completed prior to the 2-day face-to-face course. And like we said, they've got 2 different types. So the face-to-face 2-day workshop or the alternative live online version that they're rolling with at the moment. And then after that, that session or those sessions, they then have a mock exam in Moodle, and that prepares them for the exam. And the exam is actually independent and separate from their environment. It's a separately run exam, but the questions that they've loaded that are similar to the exam questions are put into Moodle, and so the learners have a really good opportunity to practice prior to the actual exam, the external exam. Okay, so what we're going to look at here is just some examples of the content in action. So this is the material that's put into Moodle. So I'll start this video and let's have a quick look at it.
Welcome to Parallel Project Training's Moodle page. On the left, you can see each of the topics in your course. To jump to a topic, simply click on it. In each topic, you can see the learning outcomes for the section. Click play on the video player to begin. From here, you can play, pause, rewind 10 seconds, jump to the next video, and change the volume. On the right of the player, you can access every video in this playlist. There are multiple videos in each topic, including exercises. From here, you can also make the video full screen. When you have finished the videos, listen to the podcasts and take the quizzes by simply clicking on the links.
Welcome to a Parallel Project Training APM Project Fundamentals Qualification podcast based on the APM Body of Knowledge 7th edition. You should be using this in conjunction with our e-learning, podcasts, and potentially a tutor-led course.
Okay, great. So now let's look at case study 2. So this is positive partnerships. Hopefully you caught that webinar that Ben and Craig ran last week. Really good one, really insightful. That was much more about a high-level overview on how Craig and the team there are running their blended courses. We're going to get into a little bit more detail. Now, positive partnerships, they run courses for families and educators to support children with autism. So let's look at the reason why they implemented blended learning. Okay, so the first one is really, well, the fundamental reason is really about time and availability. They had a 5-day face-to-face workshop or course that was just too long and it took too much time for people to be able to fit into their busy lives. So what they needed to do was convert it into something that was more accessible because it was shorter and required less of people's time during the course. So essentially take a 2-day face-to-face course and convert part of that into a self-paced e-learning, thereby reducing from 5 days down to 2 days. And in fact, I think they've gone on and actually converted those 2 days to also live online as well. So the results, there are more accessible courses for learners. They can slot them into their busy schedule. And as a result, they've increased the number of registration. It's really exciting to see. So what they originally thought was just going to be something that helped people fit into their daily lives, but actually resulted in some real big impact in terms of the uptake of the courses. A lot more people attending those courses. So the software that they used is Learnbook. We'll learn more about that later on. In terms of the content they created, they use Articulate Storyline to build that interactive. And I mentioned before SCORM, so they actually use Articulate Storyline. They created the content, they saved it in a format called SCORM, and they're able to, as a result, upload it to Learnbook. The content that was developed by in-house subject knowledge experts, so they're able to take their existing material. And in fact, this is a really important one to pull out or to call out, is they pulled in freelance digital artists. So they're able to use their subject experts to develop the content, but then they're able to make that a little bit more polished, more interactive, more exciting feel by using a freelance artist to take it to the next level. Okay, so if we look at the different modules for their blended, we call it a moderate blended learning journey, basically because it was actually relatively straightforward to set up and get going to convert that face-to-face course into a blended experience. So at the start of their course, they've got 4 one-hour e-learning modules, again hosted in Learnbook, that the attendees have to complete prior to that classroom session. And like I said, COVID came along, they were able to swap out those face-to-face workshops with live online sessions, making it even more accessible. Okay, after that session, they've got 6 45-minute e-learning post-workshop activities, again hosted in Learnbook. Wrapped into those, we've got 6 quizzes. Again, it's all about delivering that learning and then making sure people are actually picking up on it, making sure it's actually being processed by the learner. And the way they do that is quizzes. So integrating those quizzes to test the individual's knowledge. And then after that course is done, they provide an access to a library of content with more information and tools that they can keep on using and accessing well beyond the course. In terms of the software, I think we've already talked about this. Clearly, you've got Arlo there sitting in the background. You've got Learnbook, Articulate Storyline, that's the authoring tool, just calling out the SCORM as well, that format that they save, and Zoom to deliver their live and interactive sessions. Okay, so let's look at some of the content that's been created and part of this blended learning experience. So Liam, can you take us through? I'm going to play on a video here, and if you just take us through some of the background. So, okay, here we go. Over to you, Liam.
Thanks, John. And just to add to what you were talking about, the results that Positive Partnerships are getting, they're achieving some great results. They're actually funded by the Australian federal government, and they're required to show results to get that funding. And they've had such success that the federal government have actually given them more grant funding to upgrade all of these e-learning packages that you're seeing now. So we're in the process of doing that with them, which is exciting. And in addition to that, they've responded really well to COVID too. And they've had 7,000 users in the first month of lockdown alone. And they actually ran some return to school live online webinars, and they had around 500 people to those sessions as well. But more specifically to what we're seeing on the screen now, we're actually seeing some videos that are embedded within the SCORM packages. Now, John's mentioned SCORM a couple of times, and SCORM can be as as simple as an interactive PowerPoint, or it can be as complex as a Pixar animated movie. It's really comes down to whose hands the tool is in. So you can, if you're building it in-house, you can use the tools and go with the interactive guides to learn how to use it, or you can put it in the hands of a experienced e-learning designer or developer who can actually take these things and really make them sing. So the idea though with these SCORM packages is that you can create something that's really interactive and engaging. You can also create little knowledge checks along the way, like you're seeing here with drag and drop activities. You can also make them accessible to the web content accessibility guidelines to different standards to make sure that all learners have access to them as well. But you want to make sure the learner can interact as much as possible for it You can create branching of learning as well, where you can have chapters. You're seeing here some resources that have external links, some navigatable menus, or you can have a choose your own adventure.
Yeah, that's great, Liam. You really can see that a professional's created that content and made it really interactive and exciting. So it's not just a multi-choice quiz. You can see there's some really nice fun elements to it, drag and drop, clicking in certain areas. Yeah, you guys done a great job in terms of creating that content or supporting positive partnerships there and building that content. And it just shows what can be done. And yeah, it's amazing to hear that you're actually taking it to the next level. What we just saw is just a start. You're about to take it to the next level beyond that. So great. Okay, so case study 3, True. So True is an Australian training provider. They run courses for social workers and health professionals. So let's jump into why blended for True. Okay, so first of all, why? Well, it's actually much the same as what we previously were talking about, availability and accessibility of courses. So what they found is their workshop courses were too long or were very difficult for healthcare workers who are very busy lives to be able to attend. And so they wanted to build courses that could be delivered and consumed remotely, and it didn't require the amount of time off work and outside of the office, traveling and so forth. So that was their focus, to be able to build high quality learning that's accessible for everyone. And so they used Blended to do that. They were able to reduce the face-to-face element from 2 days by making it self-paced e-learning and incorporating that. Now, what have the results been? Well, much like what we just talked about before, it's much more accessible. What does that mean? It means more people are taking up those courses, and their registrations are growing through the roof. It's really exciting to see, just by reducing the amount of time that you have to put out of your schedule to attend these courses, makes it more accessible, means more people can do it. The software that they used, Learnbook again, so they've used that as their platform. And I've actually used the Moodle component Learnbook. That's what's sitting behind driving Learnbook. And I've used the native functionality in Moodle and Learnbook to be able to load in videos, quizzes, forums, and so forth. The content was delivered in-house, and like we talked about before, they've just leveraged their existing material and repurposed it into the e-learning format or online format. So if we take a closer look at the different components of their blended learning journey, if you like. So once again, prior to that face-to-face or indeed live online session, they've got some online activities that they've built into Learnbook. So a bunch of activities, again, that quiz, the terminology there we're bringing up, or the testing of learning, not just the content, the testing of learning, all wrapped into an e-learning module is what they're doing there. I think everyone's used that example. You can see it's not just enough to provide videos or content, it's about making sure people are actually consuming that and learning from it. Then you've got that interactive element, the classroom element. And then after that, you've got a whole lot more e-learning self-paced modules. In fact, in this case, they've got 10. They've broken them down so they can be delivered and consumed in 30-minute lots. So that they've made it, I guess, a little bit more consumable, a bit more easy to consume and spread out. So you've got 10 different modules there. You've then got some podcasts that you can watch, so videos and podcasts that you can watch. After that, you can access their online resource hub. So all the material that they've put in, they've uploaded to Learnbook so that people who are on this course then get access to all that material. They've set up a forum, so tutors and peers can post questions. There's collaboration like we talked about as well in the past examples. And so they reinforce the activities in a final evaluation for their CPD points. So the software that's sitting behind it, I think we've already mentioned this multiple times, Arlo clearly, Learnbook, and Zoom. So interesting, actually, everyone seems to be using Zoom these days for live online. So that seems to be the platform of choice to run your webinars. Okay, so let's look at some of the content there. So what we'll do here is we'll run the video, and over to you, Liam, giving us a bit of background here, what we're looking at.
Thanks, John. And like you said, the audience that True have, they're very discerning individuals. So they need to make sure that the product is high quality. as you're seeing here. John referred to this earlier. This SCORM package here is actually built using a tool called Articulate Rise. And the great thing about Articulate Rise is it's really simple to use for developing. Another great thing about it is it's truly responsive for all types of devices. So it doesn't just scale down to the mobile screen size, it actually shifts things around on the screen to make it easier to use on a mobile device. So if you're thinking about the audience that True have, medical practitioners, they're very time poor. And so if they're time poor, they need to be able to do their learning on the go wherever they are, and they can do that through the mobile device. And I think a little bit earlier as well, you saw some progress bars, which is a really good use of gamification, where a learner is able to see the scale of the task ahead of them if they haven't done anything on it yet, or if they're only part way through. And then they also get a sense of accomplishment once they have completed them. What you're seeing on the screen now is some examples of activities or knowledge checks that you can use. So this is a matching activity that's on there. We saw some other drag and drops and click to reveals. Rise is a very simple tool, so you can have simple interactions, but the great thing about that simplicity is that if you're dipping your toe into the SCORM waters for the first time, it's very easy to pick up. If you can create a PowerPoint presentation, you can create something using Articulate as well. What you see afterwards are some discussion forums once the people have gone through the course as well. It generates a community online on their platform, as John was referring to in his earlier example. It encourages them to come back to the platform, but also as a training business owner, it's encouraging them to come back to the platform more, which means they'll do more training with you and be encouraged to come back and do more training. And what we saw at the beginning was that predisposing quiz that we were talking about as well. That's really important, that you make that self-marking. So you're using a tool within the platform where you don't need to perform any manual effort. That's a really key one to maximize the profit that we were talking about earlier.
That's great, Liam. Really good. It's great to see that content really come to life, and essentially the same thing we pick up on, just making that interactive content exciting to use. Instead of a multi-choice question, you've got these drag and drops to test that knowledge. And a really good example. In fact, Rise 360 is what we've used for this webinar series. We're producing a Rise 360 course that we'll send out, and we've compiled all the content that we're going through today and put it into an interactive learning module. So look out for that and take note of just another application of building e-learning around a course. Yeah, really good stuff. Okay, so I think Ben, you're in control of this section. You've got some questions.
Yeah, wonderful. So thanks again to both you guys. That's some fantastic insight. As my role at the business is really to interact with the customers and hear their voices and what they're after. And you guys have hit it on the head in terms of, this is exactly what's on everybody's mind, and it really lays out, how do we get from here to there. So definitely appreciate that. We've got some high level questions for you guys to kind of address more the nitty gritty and really drive these people and our clients to pulling the trigger on Learnbook and integrating that with Arlo. So a key question for you guys, number one, how do we get stakeholders and or trainers across the line who are a bit reluctant to shift from that traditional face-to-face setting into blended learning?
Great. So yeah, I'll take that one. What I like to do is I always like to start by asking these stakeholders, and it's usually the business owners that we're speaking to of the training business, or they may be trainers themselves as well, by asking them what they want to achieve, what their goals are for the business. When it's during a time like COVID, survival comes up a lot, and they need to adapt fast. But they'll see that this is an ongoing thing where travel may be restricted, especially if there's international travel. People become more time poor, so people are needing to adapt to this blended method of learning even faster. So I also then ask them what experience do they want to give their customers? So creating that real great customer experience for them as well, and what added value can they provide them? Ultimately, they'll find that the market will force them to move. So if you are only offering face-to-face training, the market may just force you to move anyway. Because if you're not doing it, your competitors may. And then if your competitors are getting better results, we all know what happens. So even if it's just to provide resources or assets as an added value for your face-to-face learners, and no one's removing face-to-face at all. Face-to-face is truly valuable. We run face-to-face sessions to teach people how to use Learnbook, but it's worth creating a modern online experience around that for that blended learning.
Yeah, it's great, isn't it, Liam? I think that necessity is really key, isn't it? With COVID, these ideas, and some people are doing it well. You know, look at that example, the Positive Partnerships, I think, was doing it in 2009. It was COVID that really, I guess, made the change and was a catalyst for that transition, and they're ready for it. But yeah, I think everyone's more open and open-minded now, having been pushed in that direction. And what it means is people are actually experiencing the improvement. So, you know, they've kind of been pushed to get into this, and they've tried it and it's working, and they realize that you can have this really interactive experience with live online that they didn't think was possible. And of course, the ability to reduce the length of time out of the office. Yeah, it's just a great learning experience. And it really is the future, I think. So, no, good. Ben.
Yeah, thanks for that, guys. And as we kind of have touched on throughout the presentation, shifting to blended learning is not so much just about adapting to COVID, but also future-proofing your business, right? You're setting yourself up for a very scalable business. You know, as John highlighted, the key aspect here is really driving those additional profits from the same amount of legwork and admin work that's involved for those traditional face-to-face shifting to blended. So thanks for that, guys. So now diving in a little bit further into the nitty-gritty. I'm a training provider. I've got a 5-day face-to-face course. Shifting from a 5-day face-to-face course to this blended learning model, you know, we touched on Positive Partnerships doing almost exactly this, and shifting to a 2-day face-to-face, and then offering that face-to-face series of sessions virtually. It's kind of a daunting thought, right? Condensing all of that into a 2-day. So how do I start? What's step one, Liam?
Well, yeah, how do you eat an elephant? You just one bite at a time. Start small. Don't try and convert it all at once. Most of us will be familiar with change management principles, and you don't change everything and turn it all on its head all at once. Start small. So you think about the parts of your training that you never get questioned on, you never get challenged on. No one's throwing up, you know, what about this scenario and what about that? So often you know which parts of your training generate the most discussion. Leave those for now. The discussion points, leave those in face-to-face. Attendees will throw those scenarios at you. They'll need real-world applications. Keep that in there. It's possible to cover that with e-learning, but don't start there. So find out which parts of your training are procedural or administrative. Can you ask pre-training questionnaires that you have before sessions to understand where your attendees are at? Do you require feedback surveys that you get them to fill in the last half hour of the session? We can cut that back and put that online. And you can use it to enhance your face-to-face sessions as well. So get the learners to do the pre-reading, the pre-watching before they even turn up. So you can go deeper in your sessions, get more value for money. And as well as that, just going back to the feedback surveys while I think of it, you can put their certificates online and restrict access to the certificate until they do their feedback survey. So you're forcing them to give you feedback on it before they get the certificate. That's a little sneaky one that we always recommend. John?
Yeah, great idea. Yeah, that's certainly come up with us as well, and our clients have used that little trick. Yeah, I like that answer. It's really good, Liam. I think you're surprised with some of these tools out there, Rise 360, that we bring up all the time here. but it really is just an example of being able to take content and repurpose it really quickly and make it look cool without much effort, really. It's quite surprising how simple that tool is and how effective it is just to produce content from PowerPoints into it. No, it's really good advice there, I think.
Yeah, great insight. I'm going to second that, and I love the little tip to how do we solicit that feedback. It's so critical to, as a training provider, as a training business, to continue iterating our product. You know, the market's going to constantly be shifting, whether it's a result of COVID or you know, some new solutions in the marketplace, and being able to adapt quickly is really key. And you know, listening to your customers is a primary driver in doing so.
Yeah, being on that survey thing too, that's a really good example of how you take what was 15 minutes at the end of a course and just push it out. In fact, even what our system does is allow you to put surveys in there that can be done on a mobile phone as well. So, you know, everyone's got a mobile phone. In fact, at the end of the course or just after the course starts, you know, Arlo can be set up to send out that survey so that people can just do it on their phone at the end. But the key point is try and take that wasted time out of the classroom session, and so that you can reduce the length of it and turn it into blended. Cool.
Yeah, great call. So we've touched on Articulate and a couple of products within that product suite throughout the presentation, but what are some key differences between their Storyline product and their Rise 360?
Yeah, I'll pick that one up if you like. I'm sure Liam can answer it, but yeah, that's a really good question to ask, because what is the difference? Well, Articulate Storyline was their traditional authoring tool, and it really came from a PowerPoint background, where you've got a PowerPoint slide and you're essentially taking that content and repurposing it, but it's in the format of a PowerPoint. You're adding those quizzes, the drag and drop. Now, that's really powerful, as you saw. It does require quite a lot of learning to understand how that works and how to, I guess, get the most out of the application. The other thing is it's designed to be landscape, so a landscape format, and it works really well like that. You've got a desktop, it's really effective, but what it doesn't do is translate into a mobile device. Like, mobile phone is a small screen that's portrait as opposed to landscape. So while Articulate Storyline, you can create some really rich learning, and it's a fantastic product, it can't be necessarily consumed, or it's more difficult to purpose it so that it can be used both on a desktop and a mobile device. So that's where Rise 360 came along, and they really focused on, I guess, less functionality, quicker, easier to learn, but also when you create the content, it's just like a responsive website. So you go onto any website these days and you can look at it on a big monitor that's landscape, but if you pick up your phone and you watch it on your phone, you can see it, and it's really purposely built for the phone as well as the big screen. And that's what Rise 360 allows us to do. It's just a different approach, easier to use. You can consume the content on multiple devices. But certainly there's place for both those products. Liam, do you have anything to add to that response?
Well, just one thing where you need to obviously understand your audience, and I mentioned accessibility previously. As of recording, right now, Articulate Rise can not meet the web content accessibility guidelines for the AA standard, which you find that a lot of governments require. And so Storyline would be required for that in order to meet those design guidelines to help people that have, you know, low vision or no vision or dexterity issues as well. So that'd be the only thing I'd add there. So understand what tool that you need to use for the audience that you have.
Yeah, so fantastic insights there, guys. Another quick question for you guys, and again, it's something that we've kind of alluded to. Is blended learning just a buzzword? Is this temporary? Are we going to be, you know, investing effort and obviously the cost of time and resource into setting up a blended learning platform, only to see it disappear here in a few months when the market returns?
Well, no. Obviously, I've vested interest in saying no, and I guess when Elon Musk's, puts chips in our brains and we can all learn that way, then sure, then it'll be gone. But the way of creating more value from and more time and making things more accessible for people, it is a trend, but it's a trend on the way things are going. It's happening a lot more, where not only are we going to have a more flexible work policy where you can work from home more often, if not permanently, organizations are also going to have more spread out workforces. So if you're a training business that goes into businesses to train all their staff on one day, or you set up in a major capital city where you're going to be running face-to-face training sessions, people are going to be moving out of major capital cities around the world because they can work anywhere. So populations are going to be more spread out as well. So things needing to go online, so that if people are going to make the journey to travel to do something face-to-face, they've got all this other value that surrounds it as well. And just going back to the pricing thing that's popped into my head, imagine if 3 months after a course, if I remember back to something that I learned face-to-face and I want to access that resource again, imagine if I've got access to that resource online afterwards as well. I'll then be more likely to tell other people to go do that course because I'm continuing to get value out of it as we go.
Yeah, totally. I think this is not a buzzword. This is the future, and we're seeing it now. And we've got really good examples of the fact. I think as training providers too, you've got to have your niche there. There's a whole lot of learning that can be done online. You've got Udemy, you've got Coursera, you've got all this learning that's available. And as training providers, you've got to cut yourself or create a niche. And part of your niche is that learning that involves interaction, right? So that real, what we call practical learning. That's where the space you want to play in. But you want to make sure that you're leveraging all the other stuff that's going on in terms of e-learning and the delivery of knowledge, so that you can compete with Udemy and Coursera. You can add extra value because you're delivering that interactive element to your courses, but you're not. But you're also leveraging what they're leveraging, which is that ability to deliver learning in a self-paced environment. So you're combining the two, but you're clearly differentiating yourself from just pure e-learning. And I think that's the place you want to play. Make sure that you've got that interactive element within your courses, but also picking up on trends in e-learning and content delivery.
Wonderful. Yeah, I think general consensus is absolutely not a buzzword. We're in the midst of a sea change, and the market is really visualizing that for us. The way that consumers are consuming this content, the writing's on the wall. It's time to get with the program, sign up with Arlo, sign up with Learnbook, and let's get that blended platform in the hands of the learners.
Okay, that's great. Look, I know we're running short of time here, so let's make it really quick. Just a quick overview of both Arlo and Learnbook. So really briefly there, what are the different components of Arlo and Learnbook and how they work together? Well, as you can see on the right there, so Arlo powers your website. It's about promoting your courses. It's got a shopping cart there, so you can take registrations and process the payments. Finance, that's all about integrating with your accounting system, so you can link in, say, Xero automatically or any other accounting system you're running there. Make sure that the invoices and the credit notes all sync together nicely. You've got your marketing tools, so running campaigns, email campaigns to promote your courses. And don't forget, actually, it runs private courses and public courses, so courses that you deliver on site for a specific audience or a specific company, as well as your public program. You've got your CRM there, so storing your custom database. If you use another CRM, it's no problem. We can integrate with that. We'll talk about that just in a second. And of course, at the heart of it is course management. So course scheduling, live online scheduling. We've got not just the single session scheduling for a course, but you can do multiple sessions. That's a real key feature of Arlo. Those sessions can be classroom or live online, mix. And of course, you've got all that reporting. In terms of the other side, Learnbook's all about, I guess, the hosting of content and the delivery of the e-learning material. Being able to host your library of your resources. So whether they're videos, podcasts, questions, quizzes, or those SCORM objects that you've built in another learning management or authoring tool that you can then upload into Moodle, which is obviously behind Learnbook. And the assessment and collaboration tools. So if you like, the Learnbook is the e-learning component of the solution, and Arlo is the commercial aspect of running your training business. Okay, Zapier, this is really exciting actually. We've just launched Zapier, and what that allows you to do is integrate with up to 2,000 other applications. So it's a really cool, they call it middleware. It's a platform that sits in between us and a whole lot of other applications, like I said, 2,000. And so what you're able to achieve with this integration is something really exciting. So whether you've got another CRM, like I mentioned, you've got HubSpot for your marketing automation, or whether you just want to send text messages or some sort of automation workflow, Zapier is a great integration platform that allows you to connect all your business applications. We've been running Arlo for a long time, over 10 years, so great lot of experience there. We're in lots of countries, 70 there plus, I think it's much more than that now. We do lots of transactions, so it's a really a platform that's being used by a lot of people. We're processing, you know, I think it's over 100 million transactions per annum, probably even more than that now. At any one time, we've got 40,000 or more scheduled courses. Check out our software review sites. You'll see there's lots of happy customers there, and our customer service gets a really good lot of feedback in terms of how responsive it is. So, yeah, the main focus of Arlo is really about streamlining your operation, all that automation behind running an efficient training business. It's also about growing your registration, so the marketing activity, to ultimately transform your operation. So, yeah, over to you, Liam. Give us a quick rundown of Learnbook.
Sure thing, John. Thanks for that. So Learnbook is brought to you by eCreators, who we've been around for 13 years helping organisations with EdTech solutions. Our CEO and founder, Dean Saunders, he actually started eCreators at another challenging time in history, in the 2008 financial crisis, where Dean was the learning and development manager at a large group of insurance companies, and he had his training budget cut in half. And Dean investigated e-learning from that and thought, well, I can do this myself, and took the plunge into starting his own business at that time. So now Learnbook is in 27 different countries with over 500 clients and over 3.5 million users around the world. So Learnbook is our distribution of Moodle, which is the world's most widely used learning management system. Moodle's in 190 countries around the world, has close to 200 million registered users, plus all the non-registered users, because it's open source as well. So Learnbook utilizes all of the powerful functionality of Moodle, but also adds the ability to brand it for your organization. Additionally, it simplifies the learner experience through an improved user interface, has some simple dashboards as well as useful course creation tools that come out of the box, and we saw some of those earlier.
Great. So Liam, if you're interested, what do you do next?
Well, for us at Learnbook, if you're interested, please feel free to follow the link that you've seen on screen. You'll also get some details through to your inbox, I'm sure. You can also contact us at any time at edtech@ecreators.com.au. If you're interested in Learnbook, you get a branded demo site for your organization. So if you like it, you can show it to others within your organization at the same time as well. And one of our customer education team will be happy to walk you through that process so that you're familiar with all the ins and outs and make sure it's suitable for your needs.
Thanks for the walkthrough on both Learnbook and Arlo, John. I'm sure both of you will see some full inboxes within the next few minutes. And hopefully continue to trickle in throughout the day. So what's next for you guys? New customers obviously would love to schedule a demo, kind of talk shop as far as what can Arlo do for your business. Obviously, feel free to hop on arlo.co. There is the option for you guys to spin up a quick trial for your business. You've got 14 free days to navigate around the platform and start push and play on various components. Existing customers, as always, both Ezra, my customer success counterpart in the UK, and myself would love to have a conversation with you about how do we get the blended ball rolling for you and your business. Also, in the next couple of hours, we'll be getting the email sent off with a link to the webinar recording. So keep an eye out for that. Feel free to share that amongst key stakeholders and decision makers at your business. And as John alluded to earlier in the presentation, we've put together a fantastic guide to blended learning using Rise 360. So not only is that a fantastic resource, but also looking at that as something that you guys can put together with Rise 360 and implement through Learnbook, through Arlo. All things worth bearing in mind. So thank you again for taking the time out of your day. Special thanks to both John and Liam for hopping on and navigating through the blended discussion. And we look forward to seeing you at our next live online webinar series.